Well, as you can see from the title below where I'm talking on this video screen, I think you can clearly tell that I'm not reviewing Ready Player One this week. And even though I said on Facebook that I was going to do it, and I've told a few people that I'm friends with that I was going to review it, I wasn't able to see the movie yesterday, and it's kind of a long. All I can say is that my buddy and I, Zach Keller, usually have this thing where we alternate between who pays for the movie, who gets to have the movie trip as the treat. And for one reason or another, it just didn't happen. Like, schedules got in the way. There was really no way we could get to the movie. And and I'm just gonna say this, Zach. If you watch this video, I am not attacking you. I'm just trying to explain. I'm just trying to say why we weren't able to see the movie, and it's fine. It's not. It's we'll see the movie whenever we can. And considering the fact that uh, a lot of people have been talking about the 25th anniversary of Jurassic Park coming up, I figured it'd be a good idea to capitalize on that. So I'm going to talk about the first movie, which was released 25 years ago. I'll talk about the sequels at a later time, probably not in back-to-back weeks because I think I'm not doing a Jurassic Park themed month, so there's no point. And I feel like there are other movies I could talk about as opposed to going through an entire series back to back. So I'll just go over the story of Jurassic Park. I know it's a very famous movie, and I know that probably most of the people that watch these kinds of videos on YouTube, whether they follow me or not, are probably well aware of. They probably know the entire movie, but for the people who might see this video that have heard of the movie and don't know what the plot is, it's basically based off of Michael Crichton's novel from 89 or 90 about these genetically engineered dinosaurs that are part of a zoo slash theme park on this exotic island about 100, 200 miles away from Costa Rica. And after a recent incident that leaves one of the workers dead, the CEO and owner of the company, InGen, John Hammond, decides to enlist the expertise of paleontologist Alan Grant, paleobotanist Ellie Sattler, and uh, mathematician theorist or chaotician Ian Malcolm to help prove that the park is in fact safe. And along for the ride is Hammond's lawyer Donald Gennaro and Hammond's grandchildren Lex and Tim Murphy. And as far as comparing the book to the movie, I'll try to keep that to a minimum because, I mean, for one thing, it's taken me almost 4 minutes just to get to the point where I can start reviewing the movie. So I'll probably make a few comparisons here and there, but I'm going to try and keep this from being a barrage of me saying that happened in the movie. This is not how it went in the book. Because for one thing, if the book was very faithfully remade and they strayed very, very, very little, um, well, for one thing, the movie wouldn't be PG-13. It would definitely be an R because the book was a lot more graphic and violent than what the movie ended up being. So I think the one thing I will say about this is that this is kind of a pro and a semi-con of the movie. In the movie, they kind of make the main characters simplistic. They're not cartoony, but they're very easy to grasp and sympathize with or empathize with. But I feel like with Grant's story, in the movie, he's this guy who isn't really a huge fan of kids, but he's kind of a huge fan of dinosaurs. And and the reason why that doesn't really, I feel like they could have given a more interesting reason than that instead of just say, "Oh, I don't want kids." I think it would have been more interesting if he in the book, Grant actually loved kids because of their fascination with dinosaurs, which was something he was passionate about. So there was that emotional sentimentality kind of connection to that. And in the book, Grant was actually married, but his wife died. I don't think the book ever explained why. So I think as far as movie Grant goes, I think they could have made it more like he had a wife that was pregnant. She died in childbirth along with the kid, and ever since then he's been kind of detached from the idea of family and the whole adventure that he has in the movie trying to get Lex and Tim to safety. I think if they had that as a story arc where he starts to relearn the joys of being in a family like unit, I think that would have been more powerful. And the movie Hammond is actually a little more John Hammond in this one is more complex because I mean, yeah, he does come off as this guy who sees the monetary value of this park, but he does eventually realize his mistake and he does try to make amends for it. So he does eventually grow as a character, but I mean, most of the characters are still very interesting. There are a lot of movies out there that that have simplistic characters. Like, I mean, geez, let's see. The Back to the Future movies have very basic characters. Um, most of the characters in the Ghostbusters movies are kind of not that hard to read. I mean, you don't. Not every movie you see needs to be a. Not every character in a movie has to be Citizen Kane or John Book. From Witness. You don't. Not every movie needs very deep, interesting characters. They just need to be likable and entertaining enough for you to want to follow them. And I will say this, the movie does a good job at explaining the reams and reams of dialogue in the book into a way where it's easy for an audience to follow because for one thing, if they put as much detail in the movie that they had in the book, the movie would easily be almost 3 hours long. And I don't think the average moviegoer would want to see a 3 hour movie of you know you wouldn't want to see a 3 hour movie that had an hour and a half of build up and then an hour and a half of action. I mean, King Kong got away with it okay, but I think Peter Jackson was trying too hard to turn into I think he was trying too hard to turn King Kong into a monster movie version of Lord of the Rings, which I still haven't seen by the way. Um so I was the only part where the sped up exposition gets the only part where it doesn't really work as well, it works okay but could have been better, is when they're trying to explain the rival company. They show this guy in a red shirt, khaki pants, and a nice little Panama hat, Lewis Dodgson, meeting up with Dennis Nedry, played by Wayne Knight, and they do explain the basics that Dogson's trying to steal these embryos so his company can catch up with InGen. But and yeah, you do get the basic idea, but you don't really know who Dachshund is. In the book, they explain that he's this reckless fool who's committed a lot of mistakes and illegal actions due to his, irresponsible experiments. And they establish in the book that this company Biosyn is trying to outdo InGen, Hammond's company, because they're rivals. I If you read the book, it doesn't really matter. But if you're going into this movie not really knowing any of the characters, I think this scene, you'll get the idea, but you're not really going to completely understand it. Because in that scene, they're explaining what's going on, but they're not giving you a very compact reason as to why. And I know that film is a visual medium, so it's not like a book where you have to explain everything via the written word. But for something like this that was a major plot point in the movie and to have it to be almost glossed over in the for a storyline like this in the book that just pretty much gets glanced over in the movie, if you're going to take if you're going to adapt a book into a movie, you need to make sure that if you're going to introduce an important plot point from the book and put it in the movie, you need to at least explain it in a way that's still intelligent but still gives off a very clear idea of what's going on and not just the bare bones. So I think the fact that the movie tries to simplify a very complex book, it works for the most part, but I think the rival trying to steal business secrets, I think that could have been dealt with. I think if they had given that scene an extra 7 minutes, I think that would have pretty much eliminated anything I have to complain about. The effects in Jurassic Park, which this is one of the early uses of CGI to a grand extent, and the CGI effects still look pretty good. Honestly, the effects in the original, the first three Jurassic Park movies look pretty good. There were a few effect shots in Jurassic Park 3 that were a little lacking, but as far as I'm concerned, that's a problem with a future movie, not the movie I'm reviewing. I'm reviewing the 1993 original here. And so honestly, I think with the effects, I think because we've seen CGI so much now, we can kind of tell the difference between what was a practical effect and what was done within a computer. But the effects were meticulously crafted, so I still think if I think the average moviegoer who doesn't see that many movies watching it for the first time, I think you might be able to tell the difference, but I wouldn't be surprised if you couldn't. But people like me and a lot of the guys I hang out with, we can easily tell because we've seen probably more movies in our lifetime than we'll ever like. We've seen more movies that would be higher than the amount of years we'll be alive. That like we've seen more movies than it's just that's a whole other story. So I feel like this movie had a lot of great ideas. It was a basic family adventure film that had a simple message of, don't mess with nature, which is a lesson that they would constantly hammer in throughout the other movies, and they never could get it the moral just right. This one was perfect because this was the first time we heard this kind of story in this sort of situation and scenario. Um, so I think this movie is actually really good. I think it's probably one of the best movies that came out of the 90s. And yes, I think this was probably Spielberg's biggest hits since Indiana Jones and Last Crusade. Because, I mean, Hook was a decent movie. Always was okay from what I've read. But Jurassic Park was a huge hit. And then also, I think Schindler's List also came out the same year. So yeah, Spielberg was starting to be going from great to decent to back to great again. So I think if you want to watch a really fun monster movie from the '90s with a little bit of a brain to it, Jurassic Park's a great movie. And I'll try to figure out when Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom comes out so I can try to review the rest of those movies before that one comes out. And as for Ready Player One, I'm not sure when I'll get to reviewing it, but I might review it somewhere within the next month, or I might end up reviewing something else and not watching Ready Player One. But we'll see what happens. So it's been a good review, and hopefully I can come up with an interesting movie where I'm talking more about the subject as opposed to other elements of the movie. So see ya.